Hey my sugar bears, welcome back to my channel, Bougie AF. It's your host, JackieNicole. It's where I say stay bougie on them. It's me feeding you feminism for the soul. It's my soul food offering. It's where I apply pressure to issues by being critical and logical. Now don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's get to the commentary where I can guarantee you I will be doing too much because that's just me. And like Sheree said, who's gonna check me, boo?
Hey y'all, it's JackieNicole, and you are tuned into the Bougie AF channel where I say stay bougie on them, and I'm serving you feminism for the soul. Make sure you check me out on them people's Twitter at I'm_Bougie_AF, and also on the Instagram at OG_BougieAF. And then you can also check me out on the TikTok at SheBougieAF. So listen, y'all. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, okay? Alright, so with that being said, so listen, I wanted to bring something to you guys. I ran across this interview. I've been meaning to have this conversation in terms of like the ladies, in terms of like the ladies that are in the industry right now that are getting a lot of attention for being sexually liberated. And what does that mean in 2023, right? So it seems as if though people are really kind of pushing it in terms of like the boundaries of that. Is there any boundaries? And we're talking about one's self-expression and when we're talking about freedoms, right? And so I know I wanted to talk about Janelle. And then I ran across an interview that she had did. Now, I ran across this interview. I wanted to talk about it, but then I ran across this interview because I was in a Clubhouse room and they were having a conversation about this interview. It was a dope conversation, actually. It was a little different than just like giving your opinions on Janelle, but it was more or less like an exercise of like, when did you come into yourself, right? And how did that look? And were you able to like fully express yourself? And I'm not just talking about like in terms of like being gay, but just in general of like feeling like I'm a woman that has my own desires, my own wants, my own style, my own everything. Like, when did that happen for you, right? And how was that received? And like, and how do you because of society, how do you operate, right, in terms of your sexuality, right? And how comfortable are you with it, right? So it was really dope. I didn't go up on stage because I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. The deep conversations and stuff like that on Clubhouse, baby, I ain't did that since 2021, to be completely honest with you. Whenever I got on there, 2 minutes later, I realized it was nothing but ratchet and craziness on there, so it wasn't that type of place. Also, the other reason is that I just feel like I can control more of like my thoughts and opinions around like real issues in terms of like my recordings, right? Like, I know what I'm saying on my in my videos, right? Anybody who is a respectable, honest person, if they hear I say something or someone chops and screw this, well, I hope they'd want to know, like, what was the context? What else was it saying? You get what I'm saying? It's not just little sound bites of, you know what I mean, moments, right, that may be taken out of context. So I can control that a little bit better by speaking on my platform about what I want, versus not being able to control that in Clubhouse and not knowing, like, what people's, like, intentions may be in trying to get you to say things, right? So yeah, that's really why I don't really kind of do the stages. I just don't. I just feel like as if though, like, I just feel as because I'm on Clubhouse, there's just too many bad-minded people, and it's just sad. I mean, because that's the world we live in, right? Where like I literally have seen people befriend people in day one of when things should be genuine, and if your intentions are right, you have recordings from day one, and I just don't know how like I just don't know how that happens. Or I mean, I know how it happens, but I don't know how you can say you were a person with good intentions for that person at all if you thought on day one of conversation and getting to know somebody and building a friendship that I should press record. That is crazy to me. So, you know, I think that's just clear as day. As an adult, you just know that person just didn't have good intentions in general, right? And if you befriend somebody that you feel like you have to record, again, your intentions aren't good. That does not make you a good person. Like, that's just really weird. But, all right, so back to, so it was a dope room, right? So I want to give them the shout outs for that. And so they actually are the ones who, you know, made me aware of this interview that had taken place with StyleLikeU. That's where this is on YouTube, right? Please check them out. I'll most definitely put a link into the comment section. I'm sorry, into the write-up, what I do. on this video. But so I wanted to review it with you guys, but I also wanted to talk about sexual liberation. What does that look like? We're going to talk about Janelle in this interview, but I also want to give you and show you some examples of what it actually looks like in society in terms of like what we see with a lot of different women, right? Like we see the images of, all the backlash that Meg TheeStallion got for her performance at Essence Fest, right? What else have we seen? We've seen Lizzo get a lot of backlash for how she dresses and how she behaves. And, there's times I've seen clips of Lizzo performing and just for no reason at all, I guess sending her haters a message when she can just say, F you haters, Lizzo will decide to pull down her pants. You know what I mean? Some crass, shit like that. Who else is out here? Of course, Suki Nana, this video of her currently, I don't know how current, but but currently she's in London and she's, just randomly recording herself on the streets of London, walking by, white women, and talking about, I'm looking for someone to stretch, her vagina, right? And she eating ass in London, right? So she's out here, right? And they're all doing this in the name of sexual liberation, right? And it's really interesting because me, a black American woman, and I also consider myself a feminist, and I have some conservative tendencies, and I know that probably does, for some people, how does that even go together? Well, you're gonna figure out how it goes together, right? With that being said, thinking about, freedom, right? Sexual liberation. So let me show you exactly what kind of made me want to talk about this a little bit. As you can see, this is Janelle Monae performing at the Essence Fest, and at the end of her set, she's decided to, show us her titties. And I'm going to let her explain to you for herself, like why she feels like this is something that she should be doing. Let me see. Who knew so many men would be offended by Janelle Monae showing her breasts? People are crazy. So this person said, Janelle Monae told y'all niggas years ago she was going to pop out showing skin on her own terms. What's all the fuss about? Okay, so because if you don't know, like I am a fan of Janelle Monae, and like I'm usually a fan of majority of the people I talk about. I just think that people just think that my commentary is going to come with a whole lot of bias on it in terms, or if they're wrong or out. Weigh my principle, and it's very rare that's going to happen. And when it does, I'm pretty honest about that too. So this person wrote underneath this interview, she's low-key becoming a weirdo in real time right before our eyes, laugh out loud. Because if you've been a fan of Janelle Monae, like I said, I have been, like she was someone who really came out and talked about like, not wanting to be like what we see mainstream girls doing in terms of twerking everywhere, in terms of like showing off her body, not using her body, to get ahead. Like she was really, really committed to that. And so when she came out, she did things like wore tuxedos, very covered up. But always looked amazing, right? Everything she would wear, she'd bring her style and her, at the time, grace to it. And so she was most definitely a trendsetter in that way, and she stood out, right? She was like that one person going against the grain, and everybody else was going towards what we see now in terms of like the Cardi B's, the Megs, the City Girls, and stuff like that. She didn't do that, right? And so people really, really respected her. What has happened in the last couple years, they say when you get older, you feel a lot freer with yourself. You don't feel as restricted. You're just comfortable in your skin. That's why Beyonce told y'all, and I told you before Beyonce told you, comfortable within my skin. Yeah. So that's a real thing as you get older, right? But, some people, they take it a little far. They take it extremely far, okay? I think that also then leads to, because I want to show you guys some more images and stuff of, like, what we're having, seeing currently in society in terms of, like, what people think is acceptable, right? So, and this is all in the name of sexual liberation, and that's why we're talking about it, right? Because we got to figure out, like, what that is, because I believe in sexual liberation, but at the same time, I believe in some societal norms, right? And I believe that there's a social, I believe it's a social compact that as citizens of the world that we adhere to, right? And a lot of that is based off, like, again, some social norms. So we're gonna get into that also. So bear with me. So Meg TheeStallion and Janelle Monae were called out by other celebrities who, had an opinion about them. India reshared her opinion. And I believe Jill Scott also has shared her opinion about. She didn't particularly call out Meg, but she shared her opinion about, what people are doing on stages now. And so I just wanted you guys to see the performance. And if you know anything about Meg Thee Stallion, this is how she is at all of her concerts. She's about twerking. Like, we've seen her perform at award shows and stuff like that. So there's nothing new. She didn't do anything new in terms of, like, anything different that than we're used to. I think the problem is the time and place. And there's some people who are going to certain events because they, historically or have expected certain things. And for them, when it came to the Essence Fest, which is an older crowd, I'm going to read, actually, the comments I'm going to read is actually for Roland Martin, if you know who he is, his fan base in the comments. So that's, that crowd is about what, like 45 and older, like, you know what I mean? So that's a true representation of, like, who's really going to Essence, right? But I guess they're trying to, make the festival more newer and stuff like that, which I don't think they need to. I think there's a lot of festivals that already that are kind of geared to a younger audience. So I don't think the Essence needs to go that route. I think it needs to stay as traditional as it used to be, because I think that I always look forward to I'm going to, when I go to Essence Fest, that it's going to be those throwback artists that we all love across all generations, right? So I don't want that to change. Like, I don't want it to become too modern myself. And I'm not an old person, and that's how I've always felt, like, that's what I look forward to, have always looked forward to when it came to Essence. And so there was a lot of comparison to Janet Jackson and Meg Thee Stallion, saying they're both as sensual and sexual. The difference is one is not tacky. Like, I mean, there's just no way. Like, one is not over the top. One is not putting herself out there as some nigga, on some nigga to date me, you gotta treat me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that tricking type of, situation. Like, one is not promoting a certain type of lifestyle, right? So I don't think there's no comparison. We've always, watched Janet Jackson. If you think about, like, where we're at, you can say she's probably one of the early people to push the envelope in terms of being risky and sensual. We all know what happened at the Super Bowl, but that wasn't a planned thing. But yeah, growing up as a little girl, I ain't gonna lie to you, that's my favorite Janet Jackson song, okay? And I think I'm like 13, 14, and anytime, any place, anywhere was like, that was the shit. And nobody can lie about that, right? So, but there was also a way, like I said, there was also a way that they did it. And it was just, maybe I'm a fan of, of a more of a burlesque. Maybe I'm a fan of more of an erotic type of thing, right? But that all out in your face, that's just tacky and raunchy. Like, it is what it is. But like I said, this is all being masked as part of sexual liberation, freedoms, right? I hope I can find. Oh, here we go. I want to show you guys a little bit. This is the outfit she was wearing. This is how she was dancing. She brought audience members up on the stage, and they started twerking too. So it was just like random women on stage twerking. From the comments and the commentators that was on Roland Martin's show, and people that was, I think, people that were there. Oh yeah, Roland said it. He was like, people walked out, people had their kids and stuff like that, like young adults, young teenagers and stuff like that, because it's touted as a family event. It's one thing if you're watching, adult program. It's one thing if you're going to a concert geared to the late night crowd and stuff like that. That's one thing. But where Essence has always touted itself as a family friendly event, weekend. Yeah, I mean, some people feel some sort of way, but I will say, there is some balance to the situation in terms of, it's a 3 day, is it 3 or 4 day, 3 day, 4 day event. and you have a schedule and you know who's going to be performing, right? So yeah, and then from what I heard them say, like that this day that Megan performed, which was on a Sunday, it was like a 6 hour concert, right? So there was numerous performers, so no, everybody didn't stay for everything, right? So I do think that also is a valid point. Like, you don't have to attend things you don't want to. There's so many events, there's so many things to do in that city. Like, you just really don't have to. Like, and that's also, I think, also a good point to be made. But I also, felt like it was relevant because it's a part of the pushback, right? It's a part of the pushback of people just not really caring for what they see in terms of some of these performers. Some of them, they're shaking more ass than they have talent, right? Y'all know I'm not a fan of Herb Spice. What's her name? Ice Herb, I'm sorry. I'm not a fan of her, right? Like, I believe in like being good at the craft. Like, I love hip hop, and I'm not gonna make any exceptions for this whack shit that they're putting out right now, and nor is anybody else. And I know Dr. Dre said, don't be one of those old people talking down to, or talking about the new artists. But at the end of the day, I'm not quite sure how do you tell people that you're not the greatest. You're not the best, and we're not going to sugarcoat that, because that doesn't even help you even become the best, right? And that just is what it is. And like I said, I'm not old. This is my generation. I'm a millennial, right? With that being said, but being a millennial, this is the music that I still listen to, right? Like, I'm not gonna, put myself in another generation music, when I can, I still want to listen to what I want to listen to. That's just that. All right, so let's get into this Janelle Monae, because, Janelle Monae is different, though, right? She's not Sukiyana. She's not Sexy Red. She's not Meg. It is Janelle Monae, right? And I'm saying that to say because, Janelle is actually extremely intelligent. She can speak very articulate. She can articulate for herself. And so I just wanted to listen to her and her spin on her sexual liberation and what that means, right? I will say this. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start it.
It took years to get comfortable with my boobs. But I was always taught, do not do anything that will make men be attracted to you. It took me a long time to realize it was not my responsibility to adjust my freedom in order to make you comfortable. It's probably why I'm like, woo, freedom.
How do you feel right now?
I'm so honored to be here. I've been a fan of this series for, the last couple years. I've always been like, I want to do this. This is powerful. This is meaningful. This is different. And this is important. I'm not really nervous. I mean, I will say, like, when I was watching some of the interviews, I was like, oh, what should I show up in? Like, what is this saying about me now? So I did have a lot of those questions, and I'm just going to stay present. This is a good muscle for me to exercise. Stay present.
So can you talk a little bit about what you think your style says about you?
It's about the spirit. Sometimes the spirit is dressed up like this. Sometimes the spirit is no clothes. This outfit, it says like honoring the uniform, the people who have been of service, like my parents. It says swag, sexiness, like so sexy. And it says pushing back against gender norms. Who I am is sort of like a mirror. Like, I'm mirroring back what you think about yourself. I'm mirroring back your discomforts. I'm mirroring back where you are in your freedom journey, where you are in your identity journey. It is my spirit that I celebrate. That spirit, that light.
Well, this is about her pushing back, against the social norms. This is about making, not conforming and all this great stuff. And I totally get all of that. I really, really, really do. I just think she's an extremely deep and reflective person. I can most definitely relate because I can be kind of deep and, reflective in that type of, way in terms of like how I analyze and how I look at things and stuff like that. But with that being said, it is 2023, right? It is not 1985. It's not even 1995, right? And I say that to say because I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm sitting here thinking of all the amazing, like, people who've come before Janelle Monae in terms of, a mom's Maybelline. Like, if you know the true story outside of the old costume, her dressing like an old woman who, of course she became an old woman. She actually dressed a lot like what you see in terms of Janelle Monae, where she wore suits. I'm thinking about the Wanda Sykes. I'm thinking about all the other, even the Ellen DeGeneres. I'm thinking about all the women who've also, defined themselves and, kind of broke out of that social norms of like how women show up, right? And what that looks like. And I'm probably missing some people. But there are several other people who've also, did this, right? And that's basically what I'm trying to say. So as much as I, think this is super, super dope for her, and I think it's super dope to hear her journey, see how she looks at things and stuff like that. Again, this is still about sexual liberation. And where I know her expressing all this is about her trying to say, like, why she feels like she should be able to be in public and just show her breasts, which, turns into Lizzo feeling as if though I should be able to be at, basketball games with my ass out, right, with children there. And that's what we're talking about, like, right? When does it become more about you? But I'm going to continue to let her speak.
Could you talk a little bit about the assumptions that people make about you based on how you look?
It depends on sort of who you ask. Like, if you ask my friends, they're going to be like, she's a nudist every vacation we're on. Breasts are out, she's running around, I think there were folks who use this suit as a way.
I just want to say again, I think this is all super dope that with your friends on vacation in your privacy of your home or maybe even a beach or somewhere that you're just out there nude. I think that is super dope. There's no problems here. That's how you want to be. But again, it's the masking all of your inappropriate behavior with the intellectualism, the individualism of like how you decide to live your private life, where you're imposing it on the masses, right? And that's where we have a problem. And it seems to be like this weird disconnect where she does not, nobody gives a fuck what you wear, hon. I'm gonna be completely honest. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about who you want to sleep with. We're way past that in society. But what we are on is the things that affect other people, right? And the things that make other people uncomfortable. And with other people being uncomfortable, you're now making it seem as if though it's imposing against your free will. And that's a problem, right? Because you operate in society. Now, if you want to go live in the deserts, and I forgot that town in California, there's no law, there's no nothing. It's just them folks living out in the desert, and they got their own town and shit. Like, if you want to go out there and walk around naked, and they okay with it, right? Because that's where they live at. Girl, I support you, right? But let's continue.
I just always felt like.
All right, so there's a part where this part that I'm about to play for you guys, and I wanted to come back, and I actually had to stop speaking because it was something I wanted to kind of find. Because what happens a lot of times when we talk about these freedoms, and I know that's heavily what, in terms of sexual liberation, in terms of like what we're seeing in terms of like, women feeling as if though they should be able to say whatever they want, behave however they want, and all this other stuff. And where it gets a little tricky, where we talk about, just wanting to pop out your breasts and stuff like that. And we're talking about an individual right versus the masses, right? Like in terms of like, social norms kind of dictate like what laws and policies and stuff are passed. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't know, like in terms of like how our government and how everything was established. We most definitely have, as I can say, a social contract that that we have with our government, right? In terms of like we do give up some individual personal freedoms, right? In terms of to be governed. And I do want to read something to you because I did pull it up. Let me see. Actually, did this on Chat GPT, but I also have a source that I could actually link also in the comments where I just felt like to not have to read an entire like essay. I really liked what how ChatGPT kind of summarized it, so I'm going to read that. But like I said, I will put the source down so you guys can see it. That there's I will put the source. Oh well, you can actually go to it's actually just encyclopedia.com social compact theory. And that will bring you to actually a breakdown of what that is and stuff like that. But like I said, I am going to read. I'm gonna do that over. Let me stop it here. 58-minute mark. Let me write this down. 17-minute mark and around the 53-minute mark.
Need to shame other individuals, specifically women, black women, who may not have been as covered up in a suit. I've had to make sure when a person complimented me and in the same sentence said, "Oh yeah, I'm so happy you're covered up. You're not like those women." I never took that as a compliment. I've had to make sure to check people and let them know, no. We will not do that. And a part of me I started to shed wearing this. On the flip side of that though, I remember also there being women who were styling, being like, "Why don't you just wear a dress? You're a new artist, you're hot." I clinged more to it because I was like, no, I'm honoring me. And also I want to bring a new perspective. I want to show that whether I show skin or I don't, I'm sexy. I just always felt like people would try their best to take my autonomy away from me. And once I started to understand patriarchy, once I started to understand misogyny, the way in which these individuals have tried to keep us internally fighting each other and fighting for respect. Once I understood that, something clicked.
Okay, so I wanted to step in there because, like I said, y'all know I'm a proud feminist in terms of when you start talking about patriarchy and misogyny, and I totally understand what that's about, and I totally get being frustrated with that. I totally understand wanting to dismantle that and knowing what that thing is. And that's where this gets a little confusing because that's not what we're talking about, right? In terms of wanting to expose yourself, in terms of wanting to be inappropriate. That's literally not what we're talking about. And that's sad because I think a lot of people will listen to this and will think that it's all encompassing. in this type of way. Misogyny and patriarchy is totally different than certain social norms being observed, and being observed by the whole society, being observed by our government. And there's times that if you think historically, things that were socially normal through the test of time, things just changing, that is not that is acceptable today, right? So what I'm saying, women who behave like the women that I'm pointing out in this video, this was totally not even an option at one point in time in history, right? Like even women like showing skin, being as scantily dressed as we are, like that wasn't a norm back then, right? So time passes, things change, right? So we're always talking about what's currently within the social norms, right? And so currently what's not in the social norms is, walking around with your breasts out. It's just not, right? And it's not a social norm that you can find in any, developed society, right? Currently. So when she tries to paint the picture as it's patriarchy and misogyny, in terms of like, I understand it, figuring what that is, naming that, but I don't think it's a pass for everything in terms of behavior. We as citizens in this country, and what our country has been founded on in terms of like a social compact theory, we kind of give up some of those personal freedoms, right? And we have to be honest about like what that looks like, and that kind of adheres to some social norms, right? And so you have certain policies and you have certain laws that do kind of infringe on your on your personal freedoms, and that's just what it is. So what I did want to read to you guys, because I did pull it up, and you can look up social compact theory, and I think it's really dope if people look that up. It's thought to be an invention of political philosophers. The social contract or social compact theory was not meant as a historic account of the origin of government, but it's a lot of the foundation of like what built our country, right? So I had pulled it up on encyclopedia.com. You can also pull it up there, but it was very wordy and long, and got into Puritan history and stuff like that, which was really, really informative and stuff. I enjoyed it. I'm a nerd like that. But I then went to ChatGPT and I pulled up and I typed in, and I'll show you what I typed, because I think more people have to get into using ChatGPT, is being like real specific and knowing what you're asking. So what I wrote was, how does social compact theory play a part in personal freedoms versus protection and consideration of the masses, right? So that was my question for ChatGPT, and this is what it came back to me with. Now, it came back to me with the same thing it said in the encyclopedia.com, but it was just a little bit more concise and not as long as what I found there. So it says here, the social contract theory, often associated with philosophers such as Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, I hope I said it right, addresses the balances between personal freedoms and the protection and consideration of the masses within a society. Now, I want you to pay attention, because if you haven't, or if you're not using ChatGPT, you do understand that I knew to use certain keywords in terms of the masses and consideration, freedom versus protection. So you want to make sure when you're using ChatGPT that you do, get really specific and you know what you're asking for. Masses within society. According to the social contract theory, individuals voluntarily enter into a social contract or agreement with their fellow citizens and governing authority. This contract establishes the rights, responsibilities, and limitations of both individuals and the government. And I'm going to point out limitations, meaning it speaks to nudity, right? There's laws and stuff about, indecency, exposing yourself, right? It suggests that individuals surrender some of their freedom and submit to the authority of the government in exchange for protection, order, and the overall welfare of society. overall welfare society, meaning as though if I'm at a restaurant, I don't have to worry about Janelle Monae walking through with her titties out, right? Because that's not what we do, right? Welfare society, other people, right? You're not going to impose your indecency on me because socially that's not how we behave. Now in 10, 15, 20 years, if that catches on and that's a thing, right? Then I'd have to get the fuck over it. But for you, Janelle Monae and Lizzo and all these other people who just want to randomly, the box or the other night, just flash people, well, you don't have to make that exception for you because it's not a thing, right? This is y'all own personal, introspective, you know what I mean, deep, shit, right? That you want to drag us into, okay? In this context, personal freedoms are not absolute, but are subject to limitations that are determined by the social contract. The government has a responsibility to protect the rights and interests of its citizens. Me, citizen, sitting in a restaurant. They can protect me. The government has a responsibility to protect the rights and interests of its citizens. Again, me, citizens, right? Individuals at Essence Fest, citizens, right? Like, we're all citizens, right? Like, outside of yourself, Janelle. I mean, I'm just so happy, though, for you, figuring you out and shit like that. But it may also impose certain restrictions on individual freedoms in order to maintain public order, safety, and well-being of the larger community, Janelle, Lizzo, right? These restrictions are typically established through laws, regulations, policies, and policies that balance the, policies that balance the right and interests of individuals with the collective good. However, the specific balance between personal freedoms and the protection and consideration of the masses can vary depending on the different political ideologies, cultural contexts, and interpretations of the social contract. There is often ongoing debate and negotiations within societies about the scope and limits of individual freedoms, as well as the proper role of government in striking that balance. Ultimately, the social contract theory provides a framework for understanding the dynamic relationship between personal freedoms and the collective well-being, recognizing the need for both individual rights and social obligations to maintain a functioning and just society, girls. So basically what I'm trying to say, y'all do all of these like deep dives, soliloquies about finding yourself and feeling, restraint and, feeling, y'all do all that shit. And basically, one of the things that, when I talked about social norms that I think this, this summary did a good job about was pointing out the government has let me get back to it. It says, however, the specific balance between personal freedoms and the protection and consideration of the masses can vary depending on different political ideologies, okay, cultural contexts, right, and interpretations of the social contract. So basically, like, let's say you were living somewhere in Africa. Like, I'm in Africa, and let's say you lived more in a remote village, right? You're going to go there, and you're going to see probably women with their breasts out, and that there's nothing wrong with that, right? Culturally, that's normal there, right? That's not something that's going to cause any problems. People aren't going to be shocked. That's going to be accepted. And so that's why I wanted to point out, like, there's cultural norms that enforces, there's cultural norms that make certain things all right in certain places, where in other places it's just not, right? And that's just all a part of it. So with that being said, I mean, we can listen to a little bit more of Janelle, but I'm just going to be completely honest. I think it's hogwash. I'm just going to be completely honest. I think it's hogwash. And here we go.
I am now and expressing myself, pulling all of me together. I have definitely heard things like, oh, you want attention. Look at her now. Mind you, they haven't been following anything that I've been doing, because if you've seen the evolution. You've seen me honoring so many different parts of who I am over the years.
What do you want to do next?
Let's take off the jacket.
Okay, great.
All right. As I'm honoring who I am now and expressing myself, pulling all of me together, I have definitely heard things like, oh, you want attention. Look at her now. You know, mind you, they haven't been following anything that I've been doing, because if you know, you've seen the evolution. You've seen me honoring so many different parts of who I am over the years.
What do you want to do next?
Let's take off the jacket.
Okay.
All right.
So what's the biggest insecurity that you have worked on overcoming, or you're working on overcoming?
Well, it's interesting that you said take off your jacket, because it's these. My boobies. My boobies. I remember when I first started to wear my tuxedo, my breasts were not this big. They were smaller. With, time, I started to get more curvy. My old shirts didn't work. I had to change my wardrobe. And I was just really uncomfortable. And also, like, my friends would comment on them, but they would always give me compliments like, oh, you have the best boobies. If I get a boob job, I'm taking pictures of your boobs. And you would think, like, I should be like, yes, ooh. But I was very uncomfortable with the change that was happening. Like, it took me years to get comfortable with my boobs. It's probably why I'm like, woo, free them, I can only imagine the horror stories that happened to my ancestors.
Wait, is she serious right now? Are we doing that? Are we bringing the ancestors into this, y'all? Is that what we doing? Okay. So she's a late bloomer, right, in terms of her body and her development, right? So she finally got these breasts. Took a couple years, to feel okay in her body. And so now she's sitting back and thinking, oh, I am free. They're actually great. Right. And now the world needs to see them, because now she's comfortable with something that women have in general that are more than comfortable. And so at any point in time, she's overjoyed we should see them, right? But on top of that, it makes her think about how restricted her ancestors were. Which ancestors, sis? Are you talking about the ancestors in Africa? Like, I'm just I'm just so lost. Like, when you say your ancestors, was there a point in time like white women could show their breasts and black women couldn't, in terms of like maybe it was a racial issue within the United States? I am so fucking lost. Like, and this is that shit people are gonna eat up because of like her delivery, right? Whereas if when Sukiyana says, I come from a long line of hoes, it don't hit the same. It don't hit the same, you know what I mean, as Janelle saying my ancestors were out here with their titties. Like, no, like, what is she talking about? Like, I'm totally lost. And if anybody, like, I just may need some, I'm just lost. Like, at what point in society was being nude a thing in any modern day society, right? Like, was there white people who were allowed to walk down the street naked and we weren't? Like, I'm just really trying to figure this out. Like, even when you sit back and think of all the historical books and, you know what I mean, like stories, everybody had clothes on, girl. Like, I'm just really trying to understand this, where you're coming from. I'm just trying to understand it. Right? And that's why I did bring up that social compact, because this is a part of a social norm that is accepted at this time that people are holding on to, right? Decency, not, nudity in front of kids, and certain behaviors, like in terms of like the drag shows. And this is what I wanted to talk about. There's a lot of intersectionality with this in terms of like the LGBTQ community and pushing the envelope. And so there was a video recently came by, and it was somebody storming into some place where a drag show or someone who in drag was reading a book to kids, and they were scantily dressed and all this other stuff. That's not about their sexual preference. That's not about them deciding or whatever gender they want to be. That's not about any of that. But it goes back to before the LGBTQ community and drag and all that stuff became mainstream and more accepted. We've always had places and policies and laws in place to protect society in terms of nudity. right? And I think I said this in my previous video in terms of drag. I'm just lost on it being about hating gay people, when this same conversation was had in terms of like strip clubs, they're not open to the public. Like, I'm sorry, to all ages, right? We protect children from being able to go in there because we're saying that that's inappropriate, right? If I don't know if you remember back in the day in the 80s, and there used to be peep shows in New York. There was things and laws in place for kids not to be able to go into the peep shows. Of course, some would sneak and stuff like that. But even if you go back to burlesque, the rules were there. They kind of would insinuate you couldn't touch. They didn't take everything off, and we still have some laws where some states where you can't take it all off and stuff like that. So there are things in place, but if you listen to a lot of the rhetoric that comes out of like the LGBTQ community or people in general who just want to, be outside naked, they'll make it seem it's about their hate. And it's like, no, I actually want you to get all the dick in the world and be happy. Like, I really want you to be happy. Whatever you're choosing, I'm okay with it. But that's not what this is about, right? So I don't know. It seems really selfish. It seems really like self-absorbed, right? It seems very celebrity, very Hollywood, to act like as if though there's not a way that we look at things in place, right? That doesn't mean that's not based in hate, right? And that's basically what I'm trying to say. Like, we've had these things in place and it's not been based in hate.
But I was always taught, do not do anything that will make men be attracted to you. It took me a long time to realize it was not my responsibility to adjust my freedom in order to make you comfortable, in order to make you not try and rape or molest me. I am having an earth experience where I'm expressing myself. I'm trying to honor my body, honor my fullness. I'm not asking for your attention. I should not be made to feel bad or be shamed because you cannot control your own urges. I'm not.
See, and all that aggravate me. I'm trying to have an experience where I can live my freedom of my life and you're not trying to rape or harass or do anything to her. And that's not what this is about. Like, it just literally isn't. I'm not going to rape you. I'm not going to touch you. And I don't want to see your breasts. How about that? How about, like, it just be, then stop trying to make it about men, and somehow being in danger of men, because people in society feel as if they just don't want to see your fucking breasts. I just don't want to see Lizzo's ass. I just don't, right? Period. Right? So I don't know. I really feel this was very passive aggressive. And some women do know how to talk this way. But it's not about just men, and it's not about rape culture. It's not about any of that, right? Because you're not in any harm when you're on stage and you are showing your breasts off, right? You're not in any harm then, right? You're not in any harm when you're walking through restaurants and stuff like that. You're not in any harm there either. So I'm not quite sure why you just threw that in, to be honest with you. I think it's really trashy that you just threw that in.
I had to free my own mind of what, at that time, what I felt like masculine, androgynous energy looks like. I was living in my own binary. And I was like, there's no way that I can be androgynous with bigger boobs now. How I feel inside is the thing that I needed to work through. My music and my image ascends when I ascend. When I go to a more evolved version of who I am, that reflects in the music. It's not the other way around. So if I'm hiding or if I'm giving you clues about me being queer but not really saying it, I'm still on my journey. I think that I was non-binary a long time ago. I just did not have the language for it. Mm-hmm. I say energy now. I used to do masculine, feminine, but I just sort of use water and rock as the sort of elements. More like water, more like rock, saying and identifying with being non-binary helped free me a lot.
What would you say has been your biggest struggle?
I'm always thinking about what's next. I want to be content with just right here and right now. When I'm not present, when I'm with my family, I have an immense amount of guilt. Like if I'm thinking about ideas and how I'm going to do this or how I'm going to do this next role, and I'm with my family and we're eating dinner and I'm only going to see them for 4 days and I wasn't present, I've walked away from those trips feeling really guilty and spiraling. God forbid anything happen to them, you know, how dare I? Yeah, I just didn't know how to turn my brain off from creating my art and being present with my mom, who just wants to watch a movie with me or cook dinner or wash my hair. My mom loves doing mom things. Whenever I can, I try my best to carve out spaces that had nothing.
So let me get this right. So from what I remember, she's no longer, she's saying, you know, you don't have to, she's not doing the whole non-binary thing anymore because it was too confusing. So I think she said, I think from what I read or remember, she's going by they and her or something. I don't know. Something like that. And that's still confusing too. So again, this is Everly just changing where she sounds confused about, you know, everything that she's experienced. I just think it should be understood that we're confused by everything that y'all are experiencing and telling us in terms of like what we now need to accept, right? Like it's a lot, it's ever changing, like you said, Janelle, you're ever changing and shit. So, you know, I'm just saying bear with society as we catch up to you guys, but at the same time be considerate of the fact that I, Janelle, someone who does not want to rape you, confine you, constrict you, or any of those things, want to see your bread. All right, y'all. So I think that's enough of this interview. I've shared a lot of my thoughts. I have to actually go back and cut up this video a lot to get it down. But yeah, I think when people start to get this like introspective and deep, do not hesitate to push back on bullshit. This was, I'm sorry, and as a fan of hers, I will say this was bullshit. And I know people will say, well, aren't you a feminist? I'm a feminist that thinks logically. And if society was at a place where people were generally just walking around with their breasts out, I would protect that and I would stand by individuals being able to do that, right? But I'm not going to stand by while it seems as some rich people just doing shit for attention at times when they have albums or they want to stay in, stay in the blogs or if you know what I mean. Like it just seems very much like for clout type of shit sometimes. And as much as I know this is a part of her journey, accepting her boobs, which means that now we have to be introduced to her fucking boobs, that's just not any part of feminism. Like it's just that's not where we're at right now, right? Because like I said, 10-15 years and I got these things pulled up to to my neck. You know what I mean? And I felt like walking around and it was accepted and it's a thing, then I may partake. But right now, it's not a thing. It's just not a thing. That's all I have to say about that, y'all. So, y'all know how we do it here. We keep it posh as F. We keep it black as F. We keep it bougie as F. We keep being blessed, y'all. Kiss, 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 kiss. And don't you forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I am out. Bye.